Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into First and 10, the live show every single Friday. Gotta come up with a better name for it. First and 10 live show, First and 10 Fridays. I don't know. Let us know in the comments below what you're thinking. Today, 6 overrated NFL draft players. Now, I want to make sure before we get into the meat and potatoes of what we're going to talk about in this video or in this live show, what is overrated, right? Because overrated is a very, I would say, negative term. When I think of an overrated player, I think of somebody who people think is good when in reality he's not. And for the 6 names that I'm going to be talking about in this live stream, they're not bad players. These are capable guys that will find success in the NFL. It is simply that I think there are people who are maybe slightly overhyping these players or maybe overvaluing these players. So some of the names on this list are guys that could go round 1, round 2, round 3, and maybe they're worth that pick in that spot. But it's just I think some of these guys are maybe a little bit overrated in terms of where they would be at on some people's big board. Every player is a unique circumstance, so when I get to each individual player, each story will be a little bit different. So with everything said, if you guys are watching this live or if you're watching this afterwards, hit that like and subscribe button because it would mean a lot to us. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Usually I'm joined by my good friend B. Ross, but unfortunately he has some personal things to take care of, so I'll be stepping in today. With that all said, let's get into our first prospect, and we're going to begin with none other than Keldrick Falk. Now, I like Keldrick Falk. I really do like Keldrick Falk. And the way I'm going to reference their rankings in terms of how people think about them, I'll be using PFF's big board because that's a really good sort of consensus view of certain players. And as you guys can see, he is currently projected as the 12th best player in their PFF big board. Now, this is a consensus big board. This is not an individual person's big board, but this is somebody, or these are a general consensus of Keldrick Falk being the 12th best player in this draft. And I just don't think he is. Now, he's 6'6", 285 pounds. He's got 2 sacks on the season. The year prior, he had 9 sacks on the year. He does have 23 hurries, so he's getting after the quarterback a little bit, but pretty big butt here. Less than a 10% pass rush win rates. And he has a true pass set pass rush grade, a lot of words there, of a 68.6. Now, PFF is not perfect with every single one of their grades. Some of their grades are really good. Sometimes their grades are a little skewed. I think generally speaking, though, when you are in the 90s, 80s, or 70s, you're doing a fine job. When you get to that 60 range, though, that shows a little bit of vulnerability. And when it comes to Keldrick Falk, I just feel like I've seen this type of guy before. These big, long, athletic, strong players that have a ton of upside, but when they get into the NFL, it takes them a while to figure it out, or they just never really get the time to develop. I can think of a couple names off the top of my head right now. Shamar Stewart, we'll wait and see. Michael Williams, same thing. We'll wait and see on those guys. But a couple years ago, Tyree Wilson, who I'm not giving up on him yet, and I don't think anyone else should, but let's be honest. Tyree Wilson hasn't really been the guy that we would want him to be given where he was drafted in the draft. So pretty unfortunate there. And in some ways, he kind of, Trayvon Walker in some ways. Now, Trayvon Walker is a really good example of a player that ended up working out, but he was drafted first overall. And I think it's pretty fair to say he hasn't lived up to that moniker. If he was drafted 15th, I think the Jaguars would feel pretty good about it. So pretty wide range of things there. And what I want to look at real quick, some of these grades, obviously, start of the year's really impressive. But then you look at it, Baylor, not a great football team. I don't even know what logo that is. I don't know. I think that's San Diego State. I could be wrong. Oklahoma, really young offensive line. Like they have a true freshman starting there. Goes against A&M, not the greatest numbers. Goes against Georgia, not the greatest numbers. Missouri, 66 respectable. Arkansas, Kentucky, Vanderbilt. You kind of get the thing I'm kind of pointing at here. And again, I want to emphasize, I do think Keldrick Falk is talented. I do think he is a player that should go round 1 because of the ceiling. It's just for me, I'm not a huge fan of edge rushers who are projects, right? And I don't really want to call him a full-on project because I think he could be an impact guy right away. Shamar Stewart was a project, but I do personally believe it's going to take him probably a few years to really figure it out in the league. Again, I think he can get reps. He can get rotational snaps. He might even be a starter for you early on. But again, for people who have him, I think PFF had him 12. I just think that's too high. For me, I haven't done my big board yet. I'll be doing that here soon. We'll have a full video on that here in a couple days or a couple weeks, but he would probably be somewhere in like my late 20s to 30 range, which means for me, as you guys can see in the bottom of this little graphic here, I think some of his better fits would be a team like the Baltimore Ravens, who right now are drafting early, but if they win some games here, which I expect them to do, they're going to be drafting more so in the range of like, I don't know, 18 to 25, somewhere in that range, assuming they can really pick it up. They could use an edge rusher like Keldrick Falk. Same with the New England Patriots. They like their bigger body guys, their longer, rangier guys. I think Keldrick Falk could fit there too. And then Buffalo, I think, would also make some sense because immediately he helps their run defense, and he has a decent upside to be a decent pass rusher in the league. So those are some teams that I think he'd be a good fit for. Notice all three of these teams are drafting towards the back end of round one. I've seen a couple mock drafts, and look, I'll even call out one of my co-hosts, Cade Rathbone. He loves Keldrick Falk. So if you're looking for an opposing view to mine, Cade, who is a part of our show, a lot of our videos, he loves Keldrick Falk. I don't, and I just don't think personally he should be somebody that gets drafted in the top 16, especially if you're looking for a guy that can be a contributor early on. I just don't think he's that guy, at least not yet. He definitely has the talent to get there, but not right now. So that's going to be our first guy. Let's go ahead and now quickly move on. How you doing, Danielle? How you doing? We're going to quickly move on to Carson Beck. B-Ross, who was going to be here for this episode, couldn't make it. He was basically telling me, hey, make sure Carson Beck is in this. And I told him, hey, you ain't got to worry about me, dog. I'm going to get this guy on this video no matter what. Look, good size, 6'4", 220 pounds. Statistically speaking, it's been on a decline since his, 2023 season. 2023, big-time year for Georgia. 24 touchdowns, 6 picks. Then last year, had some injuries towards the back end of the year, but just wasn't great. But 28 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. And then this year, 15 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. So let me pull up the numbers for you guys. You can read the numbers here. It's been a sharp decline every single year. And this year for Miami, it started off really good. Like, he was really impressive to me in the Notre Dame game especially. I thought he was really impressive in that game. And then the Florida game happened. And then you start kind of these next couple games here where it's like, man, this team is not the team we thought they were going to be. And I think it starts off with Carson Beck. You look at the number here, 54.7 pressure grade. That is basically the exact same thing that happened last year, where when pressure happened, he would struggle. And I think he's taken some steps in the right direction in that department. I don't necessarily think he's horrendous when there's a blitzer or a guy in his face. He's gotten better at it, but it's definitely not a strength of his, right? And that's something that in the NFL, you're going to see a lot. You're going against NFL pass rushers, NFL defensive coordinators. They're going to get after you quite a bit. So you can read the numbers, though. 78.1 QBR, not the greatest. I think, now the consensus-wise, the board has him at about 139, and I think that's properly rated. But if you're somebody out there who has him ranked inside the top 100, I just don't see it. I don't know if I would consider him a top. Yeah, don't draft Carson Beck in fantasy football. Yeah, write that down. Make sure that's in your notes, Danielle. I know you need as much help as you can get. But when it comes to Beck, there's going to be people that put him in the top 10 of their quarterback lists. And obviously, depending on who comes in, who leaves, and goes pro, like Lenore Sellers might go pro or he might not. Dante Moore, Sam Levitt, John Mateer. Depending on who goes, I think there's a pretty decent chance that Beck won't be inside my top 10. And if you have him inside your top 10 right now with all the names that are candidates, I just think you're wrong. I just do not think he has the upside to be a high-level quarterback in the NFL. Now, as a backup, I could see that. I think Beck has the size, the arm talents, the ability to just manage a game. I think he has that sort of level of game to him. And in a pinch, sure, I think he could start. Like, I think Beck would be, I don't want to say Jimmy Garoppolo because, well, Jimmy Garoppolo led a team to a Super Bowl, but he can kind of be like that for the Rams. Just a really solid backup quarterback that in a pinch can start for you, and you feel okay because you have a guy who's played a lot of snaps, and that would be Carson Beck. So, for the best fits for players that I think would make sense to draft him, Carolina as a backup to what I would presume would be Bryce Young. Just a different look, a bit of a bigger frame. And, Andy Dalton's probably going to retire in the next few years. You need that future guy behind Bryce Young. I think Carson Beck would make a ton of sense, especially because I don't think the thing is with Beck, you want to put him in a situation where teams don't want him to start. And I think Carolina, if you want Bryce to be your guy, you're not going to let Carson Beck start. Then there's New England. I think he'd be a good fit with Mike Vrabel and the system they run. I think he would make a ton of sense. Right now it's Drake May. I would imagine they're going to look at probably adding some sort of vet in that room. But I think a guy like Carson Beck could be that third string or second string option you take in round 5 or 6 and say, hey, you're going to be the backup to Carson Beck for the next 4 years. We'll sign you into a new contract, assuming you want to stay, and you're going to be the backup and be here for the long haul as Drake May's understudy. You're not going to play in the long term because Drake May's 23 years old, but as a backup, sure, I think it makes some sense. And then the Chargers, it's tough, because Justin Herbert's the guy. But, I mean, similar stature, 6'4", 220. I think Herbert's like 6'5 plus. He's freaking massive. But, they both got good arms. And again, just a backup option. So to Carson Beck, I don't think he's a future starter in the NFL. I think he's a really solid backup option. And, we'll see if he can develop into becoming something a little bit more. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, I just don't see it right now. So with that said, let's go and move over to our next name. And that is going to be Kenyon Sadiq. So I like Kenyon Sadiq. I think if the draft were today, I would probably have Sadiq as my number 1 tight end in this class. But I also will say it's not a great tight end class this year. It just isn't really great. Now, there's some good names here. Eli Stowers, Michael Trigg, Joy Royer. I like them a lot. And I think Kenyon Sadiq, man, he's got the talent and upside to be a really, really good receiving threat because he's physically gifted. He runs super well. He's pretty damn strong. He's a decent blocker. I wouldn't necessarily say that's a strength of his, but there's some things to like about his game. But the productivity for me is a bit of a red flag. Right now on the year, as my cat is trying to join the live stream. Hold on, guys. My apologies. Yeah. In terms of numbers on the year, 22 reception, 311 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Now, this guy is a freaky athlete and can do a lot of things after the catch. And that's why some people will like him. But when you look at the best tight ends in the league, they're not Kenyon Sadiq type guys. They're like Brock Bowers, George Kittle, Tyler Warren, guys that are big dudes that run well, that are strong, that can be used in the run game. I mean, how many tight ends are freaky athletes? Like freaky athletes in terms of they can hurdle dudes. They can run a 4.3. Not many. And Kenyon Sadiq, while physically gifted and really fun to watch, I just don't see it in terms of what team is going to give him an opportunity to be, like a true every down tight end. Because right now I don't think he can truly be that. Now, PFF has him ranked, I believe, at 20 on their big board. And I think that's about fair. But there was a time just a few weeks ago where a lot of people had Kenyon Sadiq going super early in their mock drafts, and I just could never get there with him because I don't think his play style is that of the modern NFL. The modern NFL being one that is like Tyler Warren is the modern corner or modern tight end type of guy, and we're seeing it kind of this year with Tyler Warren having this incredible year and Colston Loveland, kind of not having the greatest year. Now he's starting to pick it up, so shout out Colston Loveland, but I just don't see it with Sadiq. Now, with that said, again, I'm going to re-say this over and over again. He's a freaky athlete. He can move, man. He is a great mover. And even though I don't think he's a great blocker, I do think he tries. I think there's a decent upside for him to be a decent blocker. But Brock Bowers coming out of college was a great blocker. Kittle coming out of college was a great blocker immediately. It's hard to develop that. And especially when you're going up against NFL guys, it's just hard to develop that. So he also has a 15.4% drop rate. He's got 4 drops on the year with, 22 catches only. That's just tough. Now, drops are, some are different than others, but still 15% drop rate's not good. And really quickly, look at the numbers here. I mean, look at the grades. And again, I'm going to repeat this. PFF is not the say-all, be-all here. But I do think it is interesting when you see a 47, a 52, a 56. And against especially the higher level competition, that Penn State game was a big game. The Indiana game, big game. Wisconsin, not so much, but that's some talented players. And you're seeing those are his worst grade games. So it just comes down to the fact that would I draft Kenyon Sadiq round 1? Maybe, if it's the right team. But frankly, I just don't know if I would. I really don't know if I would. There's a lot to his game that I like. There's a lot that NFL teams will like. But when it comes down to it, the modern tight end is just different than Kenyon Sadiq. So with that said, I think there are some teams that would still have a ton of interest. The Jacksonville Jaguars could really use a difference making tight end in the receiving game. Now, Liam Cohen had Cade Otton last year, and I think he might be looking for more of a Cade Otton type of a guy, more than a Howard from Tampa Bay a few years ago. But I do think that getting a difference making tight end for that system makes a ton of sense. So I think Jacksonville could make some sense there. Denver, Evan Ingram's there right now. How much longer is Evan Ingram really going to be the guy? We don't know. So if you decide, hey, we want to get a bit of an upgrade there, I would go with Kenyon Sadiq. And then Tampa Bay, again, you have Cade Otton. I believe he's a free agent either this year or next year. Maybe you look for his replacement, or maybe you just look for somebody to pair opposite of him. I think that could make a level of sense too. Are these guys predicted to go early in this year's draft? Well, Kenyon Sadiq is and Keldrick Falk is. Now, Carson Beck won't go early. Kenyon Sadiq is projected to go somewhere around 1, and it's kind of a wide range of spots. I think he's probably more late round 1, early day 2, more than he is early day 1. The thing is about this guy, man, if he goes to the pro day or combine and pro day stuff, he's going to run out of this world. He's going to jump higher than anybody out there. And I wouldn't be surprised if that boosts his draft stock up. But I have a hard time getting there with Kenyon Sadiq as a true round 1 talent. So with that said, he's a really talented player, though. And there's a lot to like about his game. Let's go to move on next. Nicholas Singleton. So a few days ago, B-Ross, myself, and Cade, we all did our running back rankings. Make sure to check that out. Check it out after this, of course. And I went into it with an open mind on Nicholas Singleton. I saw the statistics, I saw the numbers, and I wasn't blown away. I was pretty disappointed, to say the least. But I went into it with an open mind, hoping that there was something there to, make you fond over him. And really, I just couldn't get there with him. I just couldn't. And I feel like the consensus on him is falling. Right now, PFF has him as ranked 104. But even on this list, he's the 4th highest ranked running back. And I have a hard time with that one. I really do. Now, some of the good things about this guy, he's got a great size, 6 foot 224. He's big, and he's fast as hell. I mean, he is an absolute mover. He could probably run a 4.3. Like, he is a true a speed option. And I think he's also a decent receiving threat. But man, the nuances of the position are just not there with him. He doesn't really know how to set up his blocks. He doesn't really have much patience. He has that home run ability, and a lot of his highlights you'll see when he has a lane, that dude is going to hit that lane and he's going to take that thing to the house. But that just doesn't fly in the NFL. It really doesn't fly. The NFL is just different. And sure, you sometimes see these clips of these linemen creating giant lanes to run through, and sure, it'll happen occasionally. But for that to be your game, for that to be what a lot of your highlights are, it's just not great. And then sitting there watching the film, he's just not a great running back. But as a change of pace back, as somebody to pair next to a bruisier style back, as a third option who can be your home run threat, yeah, I think he makes some sense. I think there's a lot of teams that would have interest in him just off the speed element. And if we can just teach him to be a little bit better of a back, there's something there, right? He's got the size. He's got all the talent in the world. I mean, Penn State, they were really hoping he'd take a big step this year, and unfortunately just wasn't the case. I'll pull up the numbers for you guys. This year, just 360 yards. Now, I thought he balled out versus Indiana. I thought this was probably one of his better games of the season. And he also played decently versus Ohio State, too. So, I mean, you give him his flowers. He did well, Ohio State, Indiana, and Oregon, probably your 3 toughest games. But, I mean, 360 yards in 9 games is just not the year we wanted from him. 3.9 yards per carry. Does got 9 touchdowns. And again, I want to mention, I do think he is a decent receiving threat. But coming off the back of last year, we hit 1,100 yards where, you still saw the flaws in his game, but it was like, okay, he's starting to figure it out a little bit. And it just feels like with all the other issues on Penn State, Nick Singleton hasn't really been the savior of the team, right? And that's just been the unfortunate truth. But again, look, NFL teams will draft this guy because he's going to run out of this world. And he has talent and potential to get into a really good spot in the league. And so again, there's going to be a team that will get him. Who? I don't know. I listed out a few teams here, just, teams that maybe have a bit more of a power back that might be looking for more of a speed element. The Giants, I know they have Tyrone Tracy, but Tyrone Tracy hasn't been great, and Devin Singletary is probably going to be gone after this year. So you got Cam Scatabo. You pair him up with Tracy for however much longer his deal is, and then Nick Singleton could make some sense there. The Green Bay Packers have Josh Jacobs. They tried with let me find his name. I always forget his name because he's been so damn injured his whole time there for the Packers. They tried getting a bit more of a speedy guy with Marshawn Lloyd, but he's been injured basically the entire time he's been with Green Bay. So they could really use a bit of a different speed back, and I think Nick Singleton could make a ton of sense there. And that offense in general could definitely help with having an explosive ground game, because Jacobs, for as good as he is not like, he doesn't make the big runs like a Jonathan Taylor or guys like that. So getting a guy like Nick Singleton could make some sense. And then the Chargers, like, you're going to have Amari Hampton for your future. I know you have Kamani Vidal, and Kamani Vidal is a decent runner. I think he ran like a 4.4 at his combine. He's a decent runner. But Amari Hampton's not the speedy back, right? He's a very good bruisey style. He's like David Montgomery in a way. So I think that could make some sense. I wish J.J. Watt would come out of retirement. Boy, come out of retirement and be a Cowboy. That'd be nice. That'd be nice. But no, Nick Singleton, there's a lot to like about him. There's a lot of teams that will want him too because of that speed element. But again, when it comes down to it, he's just not there as a running back right now. The nuances, the ability to set up runs, the ability to play in zone, find a hole, hit it, just not there with him. But again, he's fast, man. And teams will like that speed element. So we'll keep an eye on Nick Singleton. I do think there's a chance he probably goes, I'd probably say third, fourth, fifth round. I would go with him. I just don't think he definitely doesn't go round 1 nor round 2. I think round 3 is really where his window starts to open. And I think there's going to be some teams that have a lot of interest in him. So keep an eye on him. Next up, OU quarterback John Mateer. See the Texas flag. I'm biased. No, I'm kidding. I'm not biased. Well, I am a little biased, but I'm trying not to be biased here. John Mateer, man, I want to have a little bit of some slack on him because, as I'm going to show everyone, the hand injury after Auburn, and you can just see the drop-off. I mean, it's just been rough, right? It's been rough. And even in games where, like, the numbers aren't bad, like the Tennessee game, he wasn't great in that game. He just wasn't. He was really sharp to start the season off against good defenses too. Michigan, good defense. Auburn, good defense. And then the hand injury happened, and he's just completely fallen off, man. And I say be more biased. Yes, I will be more biased in the future. I do have another Oklahoma player on here. Again, I'm not biased. Maybe a little bit, but I'm not biased. John Mateer, man, there was a lot of hype in the beginning of the season in terms of, is John Mateer a Heisman guy? Is John Mateer the next Baker Mayfield? And those first 4 games, it was a fever pitch. And it was like, hey, this guy's something. This guy has it. And then the injury happened. And he had a horrific game versus Texas. And then since then, he just hasn't been good, right? He just hasn't. Now, he is still a really good athlete. And there's still some things on tape you like to watch about him. Like, there's things there. But ever since that hand injury, he has just fallen off as a passer. The deep ball has been bad. A lot of things down the field just are not there for him anymore. Even some of the short game is just not great anymore. It's clear that, I don't know if the hand is still bothering him, but I don't think he's 100% there. And that's a concern for me because injuries, especially to your throwing arm, throwing hand, have derailed players' careers. They have. And I do worry about that being the case for Mateer because Mateer really is a fun player. And there's a lot to like about his game, because he plays so similar to Baker in college. This running around, playmaker, gunslinger, throwing it in tight windows, running around and making plays with his legs, being this dual threat quarterback. But since the Texas game, it's just not been the case. Now, he's still running well. He still has the legs. He still can move around in the pocket. But the throwing has just not been there. And again, we read the numbers here. I wish I would have broke it down from early season to now, but 1,900 yards, 8 touchdowns, 7 picks. I think he has 6 rushing touchdowns too, so got to give him flowers there. 62.9 passing grade, 51.3 pressure grade. Even this, 67.8 no pressure grade. It's not great. That's really not good. For reference, like Ty Simpson, I think, would be in the 80s. Fernando Mendoza would be in the 80s, who are first-round guys. He just is not there. So, yeah, it's been tough for him so far. But I do think there'd be interest if he were to go pro. Now I think he's just a junior, I want to say, or a redshirt junior. Yeah, redshirt junior, PFF says. So he could return to college. And my advice to him, if that's the case, would probably be to go back to college because I don't think he gets drafted day one or even day two. I don't think so with how bad it's been lately. Now, if he can get Oklahoma into the playoffs and he has a bright, really good end to the season, cool. We can have the conversation, but, I'm just not there with him quite yet. For him, though, I do think there's a couple fits team-wise that could make sense. Tampa Bay as a backup option to Baker Mayfield. Similar playing styles, similar size, similar athleticism. Getting to learn from Baker would be awesome for him. Baker's not young anymore, but he's also not old. So John would probably be the understudy to Baker, and if it works out and he's there for the next 5 or 6 years, he might be the future starter. But if not, he's a really reliable backup that, when he gets his opportunities, could make some plays because the similar system for Baker would hopefully work well in his game. Maybe he can get a shot after his rookie deal. So that would be one way. Next would be Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh would be a great opportunity for him if he wants to get on the field. Now, I do know that Will Howard is there, but I imagine that next year they're going to be in a I don't really know what Pittsburgh's going to do next year at quarterback because I think Rodgers does retire at the end of the season, and they're going to be in a spot where you have Mason Rudolph, you have Will Howard. Are you going to make a trade for Kyler? Are you going to make a trade for Mac Jones? Are you going to draft a quarterback? I don't know. But if you do not land a Mac Jones or a Daniel Jones or a Kyler Murray, if you don't land one of those guys, do you just go into next year with Will Howard as the starter? I would be okay with that personally. But if you want to bring in some competition, another young guy that can pair opposite of Will Howard, be the backup, or even be the starter, kind of what the Browns are doing with Shador and Dillon, but I think with two better quarterbacks, frankly, I think John Mateer could make some sense. Kyler's washed. I wouldn't call him washed, but he's definitely not playing well. But yeah, no, I think Mateer, Pittsburgh, I think it can make a level of sense. Then is Arizona. And this would be, I think, a really good landing spot for him because I don't know if Arizona's going to be in the market for a quarterback this year. If they are, I think they would be in the Mac Jones sweepstakes. But if they can't get Mac or Daniel Jones, which I think Jones would just return to Indianapolis, I wouldn't be surprised if they go into next year with Jacoby as the starter. And Jacoby's fine. He's a fine starter, but he's not that great. So maybe in like round 3, you take John Mateer, let him play behind Jacoby. Jacoby goes on a bad streak. Then we throw Mateer out there and see if Mateer can be the future guy. Mateer, I know we'll have some flashbacks to Kyler, but I think there's some things that you would like in Mateer's game, maybe a little bit more than Kyler. Now, Kyler is obviously the more talented player and, frankly, the better prospect by a mile, but, not a huge quarterback, big arm, athletic, mobile. If you are Jonathan Gannon and you're like, hey, I want to have a similar system put in place, I think Mateer could work Kyler's system pretty well. And if he's healthy, maybe it could be a little bit better. I don't know. Just throwing it out there. I think Arizona can make some sense. And lastly, the last player we're going to mention in this live, I told you, another Oklahoma player here, but it's going to be Deion Burks. So, again, I want to emphasize, I know I have the Texas stuff up. I'm not being biased here. I think these are going to be good players in the future. Deion Burks on PFF system is a top 50 player. I don't think he's even close. I really don't. We just did our top 10 receiver rankings. And I watched Deion Burks and I wanted to get there with him. I just couldn't. I just really could not get there with him. There's so many other guys in this draft that I would frankly love to have over Deion Burks. Now, Burks has it. Like, he's got the juice. He's got the speed. He can move. And he's a really solid route runner, too. He can find the zones in zone coverage. He can find the soft spots in zone coverage, probably a better way to put it. And he can beat man. But, man, he's small. He is small, man. 5'9", 188. For an NFL receiver, that's tough, right? Especially somebody who PFF has as a top 50 player. And when you are in competition with other players who are similar in style, like a Casey Concepcion and a Antonio Williams and a Eric Singleton and all these other guys, there's a couple of those pieces that I'd rather have than Deion Burks, because Burks is tiny, 5'9", 188. That's tough. Now, you can make it work as a returner and as a slot specialist, but I get Greg Dortch, really. That's what I get here from Deion Burks. An undersized player who is a freaky athlete that's just hard to take down. But there's so many guys in the NFL that are similar to this. Shorter, not necessarily, thick, but they can move, they can fly. There's a number of them in the NFL. But how many of them turn out to be much of anything? Some of them do. Like, look at Kevontae Turpin for Dallas. A really good player. But it's fair. Wan'Dale Robinson. Although Wan'Dale's, I wouldn't say a speed demon, but Wan'Dale can move. So Wan'Dale, he's worked it out there. But man, it's tough. And it's also even tougher because a lot of teams have this sort of profile of a guy. Somebody who's 5'10", 5'11", a buck 90, a buck 95. And they can move, and they're twitchy, and they can route you up. I just don't see it with Deion Burks. And statistically speaking, he's been fine. But since he's transferred to OU, I mean, look at the numbers here. 2023, 629 yards, 238 last year. Now, he was playing with Jackson Arnold for most of the year, so I'll give him a pass. And he was injured. Only played 5 games. But this year, just 432. Now, in Burks' defense, his time at OU, he's had bad quarterback play, and this year injured quarterback play. So it has been unfair to him because he played decently well in the beginning half of the season when Mateer was there. Kind of looked a bit like a safety blanket for him. Then the injury happened, and he hasn't been as productive lately. But it's just one of those things where when you're 5'9" and 188, maybe it's an OU problem. Maybe Deion Burks would have been better set playing elsewhere. I could totally see that. And I don't think it's the system that Oklahoma runs. I think it's more of circumstance with the injuries and the bad quarterback play last year. I think that might be the case. But when you are 5'9", 188, that's supposed to say 188 on your screen, not 198. My apologies. Who's an older player because he's a redshirt senior. It's tough to see me getting taken in the first 2 rounds, right? It's just tough because every year you're going to find guys that can move. Now, Deion Burks is a decent route runner, and he can find separation. He can, create windows for your quarterback to hit and get to. But you're not going to have this guy go deep because he can't win contested balls. He just can't. He's just too small. Against NFL corners, he's going to struggle with their physicality. When a corner gets their hands on him, it's going to push him off his line because he's just not big enough. Right now, he's technical. He's twitchy. He can move. He can find space. But he's going to have to be very much so a route magician, I think might be the best way to put it. Coming off the line of scrimmage, having insane release packages, which I think he has decent form that can get there. It's just not there yet. And when you're the 42nd player on PFF's big board, I need you to come out immediately and be a difference maker. The size for me is tough to get through. It just is. But you want him as a returner. You need him in the slot. I think he can find success there. The question is just going to be who's really going to give him those opportunities. So I listed a few teams here, and frankly, I don't know if these teams are like the greatest options, but they're options. So the first one is Pittsburgh. Now, they have DK Metcalf. Obviously, they have Calvin Austin, and they have Roman Wilson. Roman Wilson has been, for lack of better words, maybe a little disappointing so far in his time with the team. So maybe you want to look to find an upgrade there. Calvin Austin, kind of a similar player. Maybe you can learn from him, kind of be an understudy sort of guy. Arizona, because I mentioned Greg Dortch earlier. I think Dortch is a free agent and more than likely will leave. So you have Marv, you have Wilson. They might draft a receiver. I think that would be wise. Maybe if they want to supplement that other receiver with a speedy option to be a bit more explosive on offense, then Deion Burks could make some sense. And then Minnesota, because assuming they keep Addison, you got Jefferson, really 2 great athletes, 2 great movers. Jefferson, one of the best receivers in football. I think they could be, and I know they have Jalen Naylor too, and Adam Thielen, but as a 4th or 5th option, just a bit of an explosive home run hitting type of guy, I think it could make some sense, right? If you're looking for somebody that can take a screen 15 yards plus, like Deion Burks could be the guy there. So in general, I think there's a couple of teams that would take him. If you're looking for speed, return man, things of that nature, then I do think Deion Burks can make a level of sense. So to recap some of the names we talked about in this one, Keldrick Falk, great player, tons of upside. I just don't love the fact that he's a top 15 prospect right now. I think he's much better suited as like a 20 to 30 range. Carson Beck, people might think he can be a future QB1. It's just not the case. He is going to go probably 4th or 5th round and be a backup quarterback. Kenyon Sadiq, I think he's probably the best tight end in this year's class, one of for sure, but he's a receiving threat right now, and he doesn't fit the prototype of what modern tight ends are. So you're going to have to find a coach that's going to build a system around him. Well, in some ways, build a system around him. Again, going back to Sadiq, Kyle Pitts, OJ Howard, hasn't really worked out for those guys. Just hasn't. Guys like Brock Bowers, Tyler Warren, it's worked out for them. Different styles. Nick Singleton, home run threat. But the running game as a pure back is lacking. So he's going to have to be a 2nd or 3rd option for most teams. Mateer, probably going to return to college, but the lack of productivity since the hand injury is really scary to me. Now, if he's anything like those first 4 games, cool. I think he's a fun prospect, and he could go early, but he's got to turn it around and quickly, especially if they want to make a playoff run. And then lastly, Deion Burks. Fast, twitchy, can move. We'll see. So, I mean, there's a number of guys here, and really quickly, I just want to look at the big board and hop over a few names where I think they're good, but maybe a little bit overrated. So, really quickly, going through the list, all these guys are really good. TJ Parker at 6 is maybe a little bit overrated. Not having the year he thought he was going to have. He was the best edge rusher of this year's class, but I think he's probably being overtaken by Reese and Ruben Bain Jr. and maybe even David Bailey, maybe as a pass rusher, maybe. Still like him though. Still think he's a really good player. Mendoza's a tough conversation because I kind of considered him. I kind of did, but I didn't put him on here because I love Mendoza. I love his personality. I love his leadership. I think he's a great player in the pocket. When he makes quick decisions, he is tough to stop, but I think his processing could be a little bit it needs to be picked up. I don't think he handles pressure particularly great. I know he made that great touchdown pass versus Penn State, but the previous plays, even on that play, kind of just threw it away on each time instead of having some hot read or things like that. He doesn't really have a super elite trait in terms of arm talent, mobility, that sort of stuff. But there's enough to like to where I didn't want to put him on this list. And he's having a really good year for Indiana. So there's that. David Bailey's interesting. If you need a pass rusher, he can fly. You need a run stuffer? Not so much. Same with Cassius Howell. He's got shorter arms. I know it works in college. Sometimes these college pass rushers don't quite work out. We'll see. We'll see with him. And then I need to see Cisse in his film. And then Caden Proctor he's a fun player to watch. Where would Mendoza possibly go? Mendoza's going to go probably top 10. He'll go top 10, especially because he's going to interview very well. Proctor is physically gifted. He's one of the biggest, most athletic, 6'7", 360+ pound guys. But he just has slow feet. And if you're going to play tackle in the NFL, and if you have slow feet, that is not going to work. If you got slow feet in the NFL level as a tackle, you're barbecue chicken, as Shaquille O'Neal would say. And for Proctor, man, he's fun to watch, especially when they use him as a fullback and as a running back and as all these other positions. But he's probably got to stick inside to play guard because he's just slow-footed. And we've seen guys in the past come from these major programs, Georgia, Bama, et cetera, who are big, strong, but they're slow-footed and they don't work in the NFL. Now, Proctor's strong, and he is a better mover than like an Evan Neal, for example. But when you are 6'7", 360 pounds, you're going to wear down quickly at that size. So if he can drop a little bit of some weight, get down to like 350 or so, and get a little bit faster, cool, right? Especially at guard, cool. But tackle, I have a hard time there. And then LT Overton, I've just never been there with this guy. Good, I think he's a decent run defender, but pass rush hasn't really improved. It's actually, I know he has more sacks this year, but 32 hurries last year, 12 this year, 9.6 pass rush win rates. Poor versus LSU, poor versus Tennessee. I've never been there with LSU over 10. So, guys, let me know in the comment section below some overrated players that you guys think, hey, this guy's fun to watch, but he's this, and that. Maybe you just got an overrated player for whatever reason. Let us know in the comment section below. Hit that like and subscribe button. I appreciate everyone who joined live, and I appreciate everyone who's watching this afterwards. Hit that like and subscribe button. Road to 1K. You guys have a good one. Peace out.